Hello, my beautiful babies, and welcome to Heretics of Dune Club Session 1. We're finally here. We are reading the 5th book in Frank Herbert's Dune cycle. I can't believe we've made it all the way here. Honestly, I can't believe it. And I'm so excited that we made it past God Emperor and into Heretics territory. For this session, you need to have read pages 1 through 118 of this specific mass market paperback. This one, okay? Because Dune has no chapter numbers. So I can't tell you, go to chapter 10, because they don't do it like that in this bitch. So I just give you page numbers, and every different copy of this book has different page numbers. So if you're reading from this one, it's from pages 1 to 118. But don't worry though, if you are reading from a different copy, a different publication of Heretics of Dune, you need to read all the way to the last sentence of the last chapter of this session is, "It will be done, Master." So if you're listening along or you're reading along in a different book, just stop when you get to "It will be done, Master," and you are there. You're there. So, before I get into that, let's just do a little recap. We're going to start with a recap. I've got all of my notes here. Got a lot of notes. This is a lot. And this is front and back, baby. Okay, look at all these notes. This is a lot. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be super chill. And this is getting back into writing outlines for this shit was already breaking my brain this week. So, recap. Heretics of Dune takes place around 5,000 years after the beginning of our story with Paul Atreides in Arrakis. So this is 5,000 years after that. But this is around 1,500 years after the last book, after the fall of Paul's son, the God Emperor Leto Atreides. Okay, so his reign lasted around 3,500 years. So we're 15,000 years into the future. After the tyrant's death, humanity experienced something called the famine times, where central government broke down, things got a little weird, some people starved, it got a little fucked up for a while there. And then after the famine times, there was something called the scattering, where people, now that they were no longer in traveler's timeout, because the God Emperor had been nobody can go anywhere unless I tell them they can go somewhere. And there have been new developments. We'll talk about that in a minute. There have been new developments in travel, but people take to the stars. They're like, fuck this. We're going out into the universe in all directions. We're going to see what's out there. Fuck it. We're done. I'm done. We want to explore. Now, some of the people who went into the scattering are now returning back. Like I said, after 1,500 years. So some of them are returning back to the old empire. Now, in our first 8 chapters, we familiarize ourselves with the current state of affairs, and we meet our major players, and we finally get a peek inside the secretive Bene Gesserit and the Bene Tleilaxu, who are now the 2 most powerful factions in the old empire. And since the fall of the Imperium and centralized universal government, the Bene Gesserit have rebuilt themselves and maintained their breeding program utilizing Shiana Atreides genes to propagate people who are invisible to prescient beings. Because if you remember, that was Shiona's ability, is she could not be seen by prescients. And so they have taken that bloodline, and really they've been breeding it this whole time. They continue their mission to be a guiding hand in humanity's evolution. They have not changed their mission. And they're still trying to help us kind of grow and evolve as a species and protect our long-term survival. In lieu of imperial law, the Reverend Mothers have become arbiters who mediate various disputes throughout the fallen Imperium. Okay, so now you have all of these different planets. They've got all their different governments. They've got all this different trade stuff going on. Chom is still around, but they're less powerful than they used to be. But so now if there is a dispute that they just can't come to an agreement on, they hire some Reverend Mothers to help them figure it out, which, gives them a lot of power. They get to see what's going on and then, play the referee for all these different people. So now sometime after Leto's death, the Tleilaxu finally have succeeded in creating the spice melange through their axolotl tanks, breaking the spice monopoly of Arrakis. There is no longer a spice monopoly. And for every milligram of melange that is produced on Arrakis, the Tleilax produced long tons. So now not only is there another place to get your spice from, they also are making a shit ton of it, like a lot. So that has changed things. That has thrown the guild into their power. That is like the guild is now, dependent upon them for their spice. And you have Ix, with the help of Leto, they have created nose ships. So during the famine times, they figured out how to create these things called nose ships, starcrafts that are invisible to the prescience of the guild navigators or an Atreides with some wild talents. They have advanced computing systems that are capable of navigating fold space without the help of a guild navigator. And this breaks the spacing guild's monopoly on travel. So things have definitely shifted a lot in these last 1,500 years. And nose ships were heavily used during the scattering and are now commonplace and used as planetary defenses. So all those people who left in the scattering, they were like, fuck you, guild, we're going to go wherever we want. I've got a ship and I can take it wherever the fuck. And I don't need your spice and I don't need your bullshit and I don't need your fish guys. I'm out of here. Now, let's get into our first chapter, chapter 1, 2 Reverend Mothers and a Duncan on Gamu. So we open on planet Gamu, previously Gedi Prime, before Danian rule under, and it was Gurney Halleck, fun fact, who renamed the planet Gamu. He's like, you know what? Let's just rebrand it. Like, fuck this. And I also love that it's not Caladan anymore. It's Dan. It's a Danian people. Now, we are in a Bene Gesserit stronghold commanded by the Elder Reverend Mother Shuang-Yu, who is in command of the Bene Gesserit forces of this planet and charged with training and protecting a brand new Duncan Idaho Gola. That's right, Duncan's back. We're back with another Duncan Idaho Gola. This current Duncan is around 12 years old, and he is the 12th Duncan in this new iteration of Duncans, and all 11 others have been killed, most likely by the Tleilaxu. But we're not entirely sure, but we're pretty sure. Shuang-Yu is speaking to a younger Reverend Mother named Lucilla, who is an imprinter who has just arrived on the orders of the Reverend Mother Superior Teraza. She's on the scene. She's talking about what's going on. Teraza, who is in charge of all, she is the Reverend Mother of Reverend Mothers. She does not trust Shuang-Yu, who openly protests the Idaho Gola project. She believes that this Gola project, Shuang-Yu believes that this Gola project is potentially too dangerous a weapon for the Bene Gesserit to wield, and many sisters agree with her. Meddling with a potential Kwisatz Haderach is extremely foolish, especially in the face of the threat posed by the Honored Matres, some of the lost ones who are returning from the scattering. Lucilla senses a heretical movement happening with Shuang-Yu at its center, and the divide between the sisters on this Gola project could possibly shatter the Bene Gesserit. And these women are usually, they're always like, they may not always agree with each other, but they always do what the Reverend Mother Superior says. But this time, things might be different. It's looking like it's getting pretty heated. The two women also discuss Lucilla's role in this Gola's training. Lucilla is bred from an Atreides line. She's got an ample bosom. She's a real fine lady. And she's one of the Bene Gesserit's finest imprinters. And an imprinter is a woman who is highly trained in seduction and the sexual arts. Men seduced by an imprinter experience such an intense sexual encounter or encounters that they are permanently affected and will carry a favorable attitude towards the sisterhood, either consciously or subconsciously. So this woman will fuck you so good that you will forever be like, you know what, the sisterhood ain't that bad. Like, Bene Gesserits are actually pretty cool. Like, I know you guys like talk shit, but like they're actually pretty cool. And anytime she needs something, you will definitely hook her up with whatever it is she be wanting. So neither sister, though, has heard of a deep imprinting on one so young. Because keep in mind, this is a 12-year-old kid down there, and she's been called in. And they're both like, it's a little early for this. It's a little early. And Lucilla isn't entirely comfortable with the idea of seducing somebody so young, but she will follow Taraza's orders, which are to teach Duncan love in all its forms. Yeah, Davy Sockrocker, that sweet Lucilusi. Once you get that sweet Lucilusi, it's over. Now, she knows that she has been selected for this task because this will make the Duncan more controllable, not only to the sisterhood, but specifically towards Reverend Mother O'Drade, a woman high in the Bene Gesserit ranks who looks and sounds a lot like Lucilla. Both of these women have been bred from parallel Atreides lines, so they are very similar, the way they look, the way they speak, and yeah, so really this is like, not only will he be favorable to her and the sisterhood, potentially, but specifically also to O'Drade. Now, another reason for this seduction is to make Duncan a total fucking stud. Because there's this girl on Arrakis. Her name's Shiana Brugh, and she can control the sandworms. Holy shit, that's right. The Sand Rider, predicted by the Tyrant, which is not anywhere. There's like nowhere in the books where he's predicted it, but it apparently did happen. There's a Sand Rider predicted by the Tyrant, has finally appeared a few years ago, and the Bene Gesserit want their sexy Duncan to seduce this girl to bring them under her influence. But we will see if he will be their damn stud or not, because as we know, Duncans generally do not do what you want them to do, and don't want to be your damn stud, even though our last Duncan, who fought so much against hooking up with Siona, ended up hooking up with Siona after Lita's death. But whatever, we're not talking about that. Xuan Yu and Lucilla also talk about Patrin, the older man who is guarding Duncan while the Ghola is doing his exercises down below in the courtyard. Patrin is Miles Tegg's most trusted homie, his Batman, if you will, which means like the guy, his like servant. Like that's the original term for that, not like, Batman in Gotham, obviously. Miles Tegg used to be the Sisterhood's Supreme Bashar, which is the military commander. And he has been called out of retirement to guard Idaho from harm and train him in the Bene Gesserit ways, such as the Prana Bindu. Now, let's go to our second chapter. 2 Reverend Mothers on Chapterhouse. Tar and Dar. The Tar and Dar story. We now travel to another planet, Chapterhouse, which is the central Bene Gesserit planet. And there is a meeting going on between the Reverend Mother Superior, Alma Mavis Taraza, who was mentioned, and her subordinate, the Reverend Mother Darwi O'Drade, who, fun fact, has borne 19 children for the Bene Gesserit, each by a separate father, 2 of which were deemed dangerous and quietly put to death because of those wild Atreides genes. And they were like, oh, this might be like a Kwisatz Haderach. We got to get rid of these 2. But she didn't, like most in the Sisterhood, most of them, when they bear children, the children are taken. They never know these kids. They don't raise these kids. It's very rare that they have any relationship with them. O'Drade has no idea about any of her kids, where they are, what the deal is, or that any of them have been quietly put to death. But Homegirl, she is getting older. She's going on in years, but she still looks great. She's still really keeping her form. And Taraza opens by expressing her relief that O'Drade and Lucilla have both accepted this assignment, which makes her task much easier. Just as Lucilla has heard of Odrade, Odrade has heard of Lucilla and wishes she could have met with her younger doppelganger. Teraza assures her there's no need since each of them have received identical liberal conditioning to prepare them for this mission. And Odrade gets mad triggered by the word liberal. Her Atreides ancestors rose up in rebellion at the word. It was as though her accumulated female memories lashed out at the unconscious assumptions and unexamined prejudices behind the concept. Only liberals really think. Only liberals are intellectual. Only liberals understand the needs of their fellows. How much viciousness lay concealed in that word? How much secret ego demanding to feel superior? Which I was like, this is a fantastic quote. I like this quote a lot. This is a good one. But she catches herself being triggered. She's like, oh, Teraza didn't mean it in a political sense. Like, she didn't mean it like that. She meant it in the educational sense, like the liberal arts, higher education in history, math, science, writing, philosophy, literature, psychology, creative art. This training program, which is designed to develop intellectual capacity versus like a vocational training, which teaches a specific skill to be pursued as a career. So all Teraza meant by it was Lucilla's education had been carefully matched to her trade. So I love that she gets triggered, but then she catches herself and she's like, you know what? That's not how she meant it, but it was just just a tick. She couldn't help it. Teraza continues. And she says, do you know that when you compare the millennia preceding the tyrant with those after his death, the decrease in major conflicts is phenomenal. Since the tyrant, the number of such conflicts has dropped to less than 2% of what it was before. And Odrade counters, as far as we know, we have no way of telling how many wars have been fought outside our ken. Have you statistics from people of the scattering? And I love that. She's like, you know what? Fuck your statistics, Teraza. This is only of people that we know of. Like, there's so much shit going on out there that, like, you can't rely on these statistics. Like, this is ridiculous. But, I get it. I get what you're saying. Leto tamed humanity. Why are we talking about this? And Teraza's like, we're talking about this because I feel like we're going to be headed back to conflicts. Like, people from the scattering are returning. They're selling new weapons to anyone who can buy them, especially the fucking Tleilaxu. They are like stockpiling some new shit. We don't even know. And Teraza goes on and she thinks to herself, I love this quote as well. We think we make decisions of the greatest moment and out of the highest principles. We work all of our lives for these highly refined goals. And in the end, what do we find? We find that many of the things to which we have dedicated our lives came from petty decisions. They can be traced to desires for personal comfort or convenience that had nothing at all to do with our high ideals. What really was at stake was some worldly working agreement that satisfied the needs of those who could make the decisions. And if we become institutionalized in our judgments, that's a sure way to extinguish the Bene Gesserit. And I was just like, yes, that's, we a lot of us, many of us humans, we're like, oh, I'm doing this because of this. And really, it's just because of some secret, weird ego shit. That's just so real. It's so real. And I'm so glad that the woman who's in charge of the Bene Gesserit is like in tune with that notion and doesn't drink her own Kool-Aid. Like, that's why she's a leader and she should be up at the top, because she has thoughts like this and she does question her motivations. Odrade, Tara and Dar do need a podcast. It's true, Mentat Muse. So Odrade then is reflecting on her childhood while she's going through this interview with Teraza. And her childhood, she grew up happy on Gamu with these surrogate parents. She was being hidden on Gamu as an Atreides scion. And her mother, her surrogate mother, had become too involved and loved little Dar. And that mutual love between mother and daughter became problematic for the Bene Gesserit when Dar was eventually taken or kidnapped. Like, when she describes them taking her, it's like she was kidnapped by witches who like used the voice and like drug her with like incense and stuff and get her to get in their carriage and say like, oh, we're going to take you to your real mom. And it was like, oh, how traumatic. But yeah, so she was eventually taken from her home for education and training. But the love that Mama Sibia had imparted to her had to be rooted out while she was at school. And this had been turned into a lesson for her. Love leads to misery. Love is a very ancient force which served its purpose in its day, but is no longer essential for the survival of the species. Remember that woman's mistake, the pain. And Teraza knows Odrade's childhood trauma is her weakness, which is why Lucilla has been assigned to Gamu, and that Odrade has been assigned to Arrakis, because they're just like, I'm not going to put you in a place where you're going to start thinking about all this stuff, and it's going to like, oh, we can't do that. Now, back in the day, at the BG school, the old Bene Gesserit school, they learned early that sharing secret or private names was an ancient device for ensnaring another person in affections. Teraza, being 3 classes ahead, was assigned to mentor Odrade, and having access to her files, Teraza discovered that her first name was Darwi, and so she started calling her Dar to manipulate her. But Odrade responded in kind by calling Teraza Tar, because she didn't have access to her files. She didn't know like her actual name. But it kind of stuck. Tar and Dar was a thing. And then it pissed off their teachers, and their teachers like, you guys can't do this. You guys gotta fucking chill out. But Teraza is the only person, by the way, who knows the entire design for this Gola project. Lucilla and Odrade are both given information on a need-to-know basis, and that's really how the Bene Gesserit work. They work in these separate, isolated cells controlled by a single entity at the top. This is a design copied from ancient revolutionary societies. And Teraza then calls upon Odrade's wild Atreides talent, her prescient instinct to detect threats to the sisterhood, even though Teraza really is kind of loath to do so. And she asks her, like, is what we're doing okay? Like, is there any immediate threat in what we're doing right now? And Odrade just kind of immediately comes back with, if we fail to act, that is worse. And her Atreides genes are real strong, okay? Like, Odrade, like, and this is as far as her prescience goes. This is it. Like, she just kind of has these really good intuitions, very correct intuitions that they sometimes call upon, but they really don't want to, because it's like, you really, like, prescience is a slippery slope, and they learned that long ago. And Odrade is warned not to breed without permission while she's away, even if she finds the perfect sire. That's how strong these Atreides genes are, because they're just like, we cannot get another Kwisatz Haderach, so please, just don't do it. Odrade reflects on the danger and the attraction of the lost ones from the scattering, the magnificent unknowns, untapped resources, and potential talents of humanity, just waiting to be incorporated in that Bene Gesserit breeding scheme. Teraza then deems Odrade fit for her mission and sends her to Arrakis. Chapter 3, Duncan Idaho. Idaho. So we're back on Gamu. We're back on the scene, but this time we're from Duncan's perspective down in the courtyard while he's doing his little cartwheels. He's doing his training play. And he is excited by the arrival of this new younger Reverend Mother and the interesting changes that her presence indicates. He understands that he is something special, and that Miles Tegg has been assigned to protect him and to be his weapons master and to give him a military education and train his body and do all these things. And this protection extends far beyond the keep to the planet Gamu itself, utilizing no ships and orbiting monitors crewed by people with planet-bound families, which I thought was fantastic. It's like, oh, you got to be up here and you got to monitor the systems, but we're not going to let your family live up here with you. They got to live down there. So if you fail, they're dead. And it's just like, whoa, that really make you work a little extra harder for sure. There are also Sook doctors regularly testing the populace for bioweapon diseases. And Duncan really likes Tegg and Patren, and he wonders if this new Reverend Mother if she's also been assigned to him, which she has. And he has hated Shuang Yu since the age of 9, and often repeats his private litany, damn Shuang Yu, while he's like doing his cartwheels and doing his things and sit-ups and whatever else he's doing. And it all started when Duncan slipped out of the inner core of the keep And he was captured before he got far. He's just like, he's exploring. He's a boy. He wants to get out. He's like stuck in this fucking place. He like wants to go do stuff. But he's captured before he gets far. And Xuanyu gives him a stern lecture to let him know that his actions have occasioned the disciplining of an entire guard unit. And this sucks. Because Duncan really likes some of these guards. And some of these guards really like him. And they actually like play with him. Like, and he has no one to play with. Like, this poor kid has no one to hang out with. And this prank that he pulled has hurt his friends. And now afterwards, they will not play with him, like, ever. Like, they're like, don't even, like, look at me, dude. Like, I want nothing to do with you after this. Duncan asks his instructor, Reverend Mother Tamerlane, about the guards' punishments. He's like, well, what's going to happen to them? What is it? And Tamerlane explains to him that major punishments in the Bene Gesserit are like banquets, and they cannot be forgotten. They carry an inescapable lesson, and they are extremely painful. Not as painful as the spice agony. I like how she was careful to be like, it's going to be painful, but not as painful as the spice agony, okay? Like, not as painful as the shit that I've been through. And these punishments are very thoughtful, and they're personally tailored to each person. And they tailor it in such a way that they harp on whatever emotional weakness that person has, where they just hit that person in that spot over and over again. and it's so painful. Like, it's so emotionally painful for them. Like, they find their weakness, they fuck with it, and they do it though, but they do it in such a way that, like, by the end of everything, like you'll be strengthened through this. So it's not cruelty just for the sake of cruelty. Like, this is why I love the Bene Gesserit. It's cruelty with a positive spin to it, which by the end of it, you will be a better person for it, which I think is very cute. It's very Bene Gesserit. But before the banquet is over, there is a dessert, the punishment dessert, something totally unexpected that makes the penitent think, I've been forgiven. At last, it's finally over. No more pain. Hooray. Like, it's over. I'm done. And they savor the sweetness of this moment. And then, bam, the most painful lesson of all hits them. And they understand that this isn't the end. And that is what locks in the Bene Gesserit lesson. And it took me a minute to kind of figure out, like, what she was talking about. Because at first I was like, well, does she mean that there's like they think it's over and then they pull a new prank and then they do like a new evil thing to him like really sucks? Or, and this is what I think that I think that this is what Frank was talking about, is that, when you're going through a really hard time, and, when you're going through hell, you just keep going. Like, you're just like, I know I'm being punished. I know the world sucks. Everything's terrible. But you just kind of like, you put up your walls and you go through it. And then at the end, when you get to the, the light at the end of the tunnel, you relax and you're like, oh my God, it's over. Finally, it's over. But then, like, once you relax, like, it hits you, like, everything that's happened to you. Like, that's when you start to process all of the trauma that you've been through. And, like, processing the trauma is, like, almost harder than the trauma itself, I feel like. And so that's what she's talking about. Like, when they get to the end and they're like, they relax and they think it's over, and they let their guard down, and then they begin processing this trauma. And then that's when they're like, oh no, like, oh God, what have I been through? And then that's what, like, locks it in, and then they realize they've been changed forever, like, once they kind of process everything. And moving on, Duncan's got questions. Okay, he's got questions. Who are my parents? Nobody's telling him shit. Who are my parents? He doesn't have any. He doesn't know that. Who wants to harm me, and why? Why am I being protected here? Why am I here on Gamu? Why is everyone tight-lipped? Why is nobody giving me answers? He's so confused. And he is allowed to research in the library. And while he's doing his research in the library, he learns about the God Emperor, and he becomes fascinated. He goes into a God Emperor rabbit or wormhole, pardon the expression. And he finds himself wishing he could have lived in Arrakis in those days as a male advisor to the fish speakers. Lol. Like, oh, you did. Ha ha ha. Like, you'll have those memories at some point, hopefully. And he has one teacher, Geisa, and she lets it slip that he's being prepared to live on Arrakis. And this only heightens his interest in the planet. And so he dives into learning about all things Tyrant, including all of his religions. He reads the Holy Book of the Divided God, the Guard Bible, the Orange Catholic Bible, the Pearl that is the Sun of Understanding. And he gets into these accounts from Dar es Balat. And he's like, is there a kernel of the God's Emperor awareness in each worm? You know, like the Tyrant said he would, like, enter an endless dream. And so he's doing all this research, and this leads him to finding out about the 9 daughters of Shiana and the 1,000 sons of Idaho. And then he's like, oh, fuck, my name's Duncan Idaho. This guy's name's Duncan Idaho. That's weird. That's suspicious. And he asks Shuang Yu about it, and she parries him with the truth. This is another thing I love about the Bene Gesserit. Like, they don't lie to you. She's not going to lie to him. She's just like, you carry the authentic blood of Duncan Idaho. That's her answer. It's perfect, because it's like, she's not telling him he's a Gola, but she's also not lying to him. And she tells him that, his parents are long dead. Another thing that's very true. And that he came to them as an orphan. Also true. And that people want to harm him for what he may do. So she tells him the truth with everything. I know. So Duncan has a surprised Pikachu face. He learns that Siona's Duncan was a Gola. And then he puts the pieces together and he figures out that he's a Gola at the tender age of 10 years old. He's figured it out and he is mad about it. He's like, consent? I did not consent to be brought back. What right do these people have? And he also finds out that he may recover his original memories, and he decides to fight Shuang Yu with silence and watchfulness. From now on, he's like, I'm going to fight you with my silence. I'm not going to say shit. I'm just going to watch. I'm going to wait. Back to Shuang Yu and Lucilla on the parapet. They discuss the removal of Geisa and the introduction of Tamerlane, and how Duncan figures out they are manipulating him into hating them. Shuang Yu knows about his little I hate Shuang Yu litany. I mean, he's never said it to her, but she knows. She reads it in his movements. And he knows that he already recognizes as Lucilla being young as an important fact. And so what they are doing is this classic good cop, bad cop routine where they've surrounded Duncan with hateful old women that he can't stand. And then now they're going to have a hot, young Lucilla show up, who's supposed to be the cool lady that he likes. And she's going to be awesome. She's going to be a welcome presence in his life. I love that they're doing the good cop, bad cop thing with him. Moving on to our next chapter, Miles Tegg is pulled out of retirement. So we meet Miles Tegg on his farm on planet Laernis. He is now retired. He's 296 standard years old. 300 is about how long people live. But he's still really spry. Like, he's still doing it, like, he's still cool. He hasn't lost his edge entirely, obviously. He was the supreme, I know, Kazmataz, Miles Tegg is a hot silver fox Duke Leto, for sure. Which, I mean, that whole thing makes me wonder, okay, so, well, whatever, we'll get into that later on, never mind. So he was the supreme Bashar, or the military commander of the Bene Gesserit for a long-ass time. And he's the son of a reverend mother with fish speaker blood, and an upright and obedient man of principles who cannot refuse the sisterhood when they come knocking at his door and asking for his help. Because he feels like he's got this, who watches the watchman thing going on, where he guards the guardians to see that they commit no offenses. So he's of the Bene Gesserit, but he's still on the outside, and he's like, well, I'd rather be on the inside, keeping an eye on them and making sure they're not fucking up. And B, the sister's moral purpose aligns with his own principles, which were conditioned by the Bene Gesserit, whatever. But he doesn't believe in justice, which requires a resort to law that could be a fickle mistress, subject always to the whims and prejudices of those who administer the laws. Very true. He believes following the letter of the law to be dangerous. Instead, he is all about questions of fairness. Being fair required agreement, predictable constancy, and above all else, loyalty upward and downward in the hierarchy. Leadership guided the leadership of the Bene Gesserit. Leadership guided by such principles required no outside controls. You did your duty because it was right. And that's how the Bene Gesserit work. Like, they do what they're told, and they believe in their purpose, and they have a purpose, and he admires that about them. Reverend Mother Superior Teraza knows Teg's beliefs. She knows how he has been created, and she knows that he will say yes to her assignment, even if he wants to say no. But even so, she shows him the utmost respect and courtesy by coming to ask him herself in person to his farm and timing her arrival at his most alert hour of the day. She knows him so well. She knows the hour that he is the most alert and comes and knocks on his door then. By the way, there's a lot of cute little things in here. I love that when he was retired, they gave him this like golden sunburst bauble, and he turns it into a belt buckle. It's like, yes, I would turn it into a belt buckle too. I love it. It's like practical, but it's cool, and you like show it off, but like it's still like you're doing something with it. And also I love that Frank Herbert continues with hiding shit behind panels, man. This man hates seeing a refrigerator. He can't. He doesn't want to see your TV. He doesn't want to see your refrigerator. He wants everything to be hidden behind a panel. And like, this is shown, continues to be shown in the scene with Teg and Teraza, where he's getting her, you know, some water and some cups from like behind this fucking panel. Like, it's like a whole thing. Also, we talk about chair dogs. This is the second time we've talked about them, and it's chair dogs. He hates them. He doesn't have any of them in his house. And Teraza loves her chair dog. She loves her chair dog. Drake doesn't like him either. But chair dogs, let's just talk about it. We just got to talk about them for a minute. Chair dogs are living furniture. They are living furniture. They're furry. They're warm because they're alive. And they like mold themselves to you. Like, when you sit down in them, they'll like kind of move around a little bit and like get you real comfy in there, you know? And it's just like, oh my God. And like, he doesn't go into like I assume you have to feed them. I assume there's some sort of excrement or something that happens. I mean, you know, you can't just have a living chair that's like alive and there's nothing feeding it. Like, there's still like, what? Like, he never goes into the specifics. I wish he would, because it's just like such a weird fucking idea, and I really want to know more. But do they have faces? I don't think they have faces, but I mean, there's got to be something though. Like, there's got to be some weird little mouth and a little weird anus going on if you got to feed them and give them water and stuff. I mean, maybe you just put some juice in them. Like, maybe you just give your chair dog some juice with all the vitamins and minerals they need. And maybe they don't have to poop or anything because they just absorb the juice. I don't know. You know, maybe they just breathe out maybe they breathe like they breathe in oxygen and breathe out, and that's what they live off of. I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't know, but I love that Teg does not want to sit on one. And he's like, that's gross. You guys are gross. Like, this is demeaning to a living creature. This is a living creature that you've turned into a piece of furniture. And I find that disturbing and morally reprehensible, which I'm like, yeah, I kind of see. But at the same time, I'd try it out. You know, I'd try it out. Another cute fun fact about Teg is that he does not want to sit down. Reverend Mothers have noted this. When he is having a meeting with one of them, he prefers to stand and look down at them. And they think that this is maybe some unconscious, like, way of rebelling against them, because he knows they like his life is like shaped by them so hard that like maybe like unconsciously he like refuses to sit down as like a little power move. But at the same time, he like always does what he asks them to do, so like they can't really like fault him for it, which I thought was a great little thing about his personality. Teg is also a lot like Frank Herbert in that he has more than just a casual passing interest in farming. And he is using his time experimenting in his research garden. So he's like retired and loving it. I mean, he's like, just like, yes, I've got my research garden. I've got my fucking projects. Frank Herbert was really not just into ecology, but like into farming and into figuring out like new ways of doing things. I mean, he specifically made some mushroom slurry process that no one knew that you could do. like Frank Herbert figured out a way to grow specific mushrooms from like, you take the old ones and you like put them in some water with like some salt or something, and you like mix them up real good, and then you like throw them out, and then they'll like start growing on shit that like they normally won't grow on. So I like that Frank Herbert and Miles Teg are very similar. And Miles is also bred from the Atreides line, and he is the spitting image of Duke Leto, which makes him especially perfect for this mission. He's the most reliable commander the Bene Gesserit have ever employed, and he is to protect and train the Duncan. And plus, you know, he looks like Duncan's beloved Duke Leto Atreides, which Duncan can't help but be influenced by. And this will be crucial in restoring the Gola's memories in 8 to 10 years. So, like, this is a long assignment. So Taraz is like, yeah, like, we need you, and like, you need to protect him, and then like, you know, I need you to bring his memories back eventually in like 8 to 10 years. So like when he signs on for this, she's already telling him like it's at least 8 to 10 years that he's signing up for. It's not like, oh yeah, I'll be gone for a year, I'll be gone for 6 months, and I'll be back. But I love this character because it's like if Duke Leto like wasn't born under like the weight of a title and a blood feud and having like getting in the middle of a crossfire of like imperial shenanigans, you know. It's like if he just got to live a chill, cool life and didn't have to like be in the middle of all this complicated shit and just like be cool and kick ass, like that's Miles Teg. So it's like if you love Duke Leto and you always felt bad that he didn't get the life that he needed and should have had, well, Miles has it. So get ready. Side note, we also learned that the Tleilaxu have altered the Prana Bindu inheritance of this Duncan Gola so that his reflexes match the speed of the times that he's living in. Because if you remember in the last book, he got schooled really hard by Leto's major domo. And he was like, oh my God, you move so fast, you know, like what the fuck? And it was just like, you're an older model, dude, like you're old model. So he's been like tweaked to where he's not going to get his ass handed to him by anybody of this time. And that's another thing that I love about this series is that it's so many thousands of years have passed that humanity has evolved and they have gotten faster and their reactions are better and they do live longer. And I think that's really interesting to me. So Miles accepts the mission, but only on the condition that he has full command of all of Gamu's defenses, the entire planet's defenses. And the list of the people that he's going to make, they're going to have to be waiting there on Gamu when he arrives. And his homeboy Patrin is to get full pay of Colonel Aid, you know, but he's not going to take a title, but just, you know, hook him up, give him the respect that he deserves. And that he must not personally be restored to the full rank of Supreme Bashar because he doesn't want to fuck with his pupil, the next in line, Burzmali. Burzmali is like a guy he's trained. He's a Bashar. He's going to be Supreme Bashar for the Bene Gesserit. And he's like, well, if you bring me back and I'm over him, like that's going to like fuck his shit up. So just like have me be just a Bashar on special assignment. That's what I want. And Taraz like, absolutely, boo. Anything you want, done and done. You are my Bashar. Here is all your vouchers. You can fill it out. Fill out your own reinstatement. I don't fucking care. I trust you, boo. I've already signed it. Anything you need, and don't trust Shuang Yu. Okay, just don't trust that bitch. And while Teg is flattered that Taraza came herself to ask him of this, he also understands that her showing up personally indicates that the dispute over this Gola project within the Sisterhood is way more serious than he thought. Teg hands the reins of his experimental farm projects over to his eldest daughter, Dimela, and her husband, Pyrrhus, who Dimela, the Bene Gesserit wanted her, but she's like, no, dude, I like my dad. I'm going to hang out with my dad. She decided to stay in his entourage and just get married to some guy, like do that instead. And they've done it, and he thinks at the very end of this, they've done it again. They've had me waiting in the wings all these years just for this moment. And this very much reminded me of that San Andreas meme of the guy who's like, oh shit, here we go again. He's like, oh no, get ready, Teg. It's going to be a wild ride. Let's go to our next chapter. Oh, wait. Was I in the wrong chapter? Oh, fuck. There we go. Okay. Next chapter, the Tleilaxu, Master of Masters. We finally learn more about the Tleilaxu, and it's our first time on their planet, Tleilax. We're in their city of Bandalong, which is a cool name. And we're with Twi'leth Waff. They're Mahai. They're Master of Masters. This is the guy. He's like the Reverend Mother Superior of the Tleilax. And they've been waiting for thousands of years for this moment in time. Through all the bad times of the Prophet Leto and beyond. Notice the Prophet, not the God Emperor. Much like Islam recognizes Jesus as a prophet, but not as the Son of God. They're like, he's a prophet. He's cool. But he's not the Son of God, so they have a lot of, we got a lot of Islamic stuff going right off the bat. And the Tleilaxu have been secretly devout Zen Sunni, Zen Sufi, which is like this mix of Zen Buddhism and Islam. And get ready for a lot of Islamic words, all right? We got a lot of Arabic going on in this chapter. We are reminded of their social structure of the face dancers who are at the bottom. These are like tools. They're just slaves, mules. They're shapeshifters who kind of do their dirty work for them. Then above the face dancers, you have the masters, and there are regular masters like the Domel, and then there are the ruling masters above them of the Mashik. And this is a play on the Arabic word mashaik, who are Islamic lawyers who specialize in the religious law, the Sharia, and even like the Tleilaxu call their religious law the Shariat. So you just add a little T on there. And we have only ever seen and heard of male Tleilaxu, who are just like a little under 5 foot tall. They're very elven-like. They have gray hair, eyes, and skin, and sharp little teeth. They're like little cannibal elves. And these are people who have mastered the genetic language, or the language of God, as they call it, to create golas, face dancers, and other weird shit, probably chair dogs. Other things like sligs. We'll talk about sligs later, but they came up with those. And these people make up the perfect opposite counterpoint to the Bene Gesserit. They are a secret society entirely driven by one gender. So, you have the Bene Gesserit who have, it's ran by women for women. The Tleilaxu are the opposite. And the Bene Gesserit, their breeding program is their number one deal. And so with the Tleilaxu, they also create living things, just in a different way, with their genetic science. But the thing is the Bene Tleilax are isolationist, and they are driven by religious zeal, whereas the Bene Gesserits are all over. they everywhere. They're all over the place. And they are not driven by religious zeal. They are driven by purpose. And, like the Bene Gesserit, who have their Reverend Mothers with their other memory, who can remember all the genetic memories on their female side, the Tleilaxu Mashiks have been golaing themselves since Paul figured out how to restore Hate's memories in Messiah of Dune. So, and it's just these people, like these ruling class. So they keep bringing themselves back as Golas and like continuing on since then. So like these guys have been doing that for like 5,000 years. So they don't have all the stuff before, but they do have all the memories of the last 5,000 years. And yeah, it's just there's only 10 of them. So, but nobody knows this. Nobody knows this. Nobody knows shit about any of this. There is finally a mention of Tleilaxu women for the first time, who are said to live in Selamlix, guarded by the Cassadars. So they live in a separate area where masters go to distribute their sperm, not have sex, mind you, distribute their sperm. That's specifically what they say. The Tleilaxu consider themselves a people of the Yagist, or the land of the unruled, who follow their own precepts, uninfluenced by the Pawinda, or the unbelievers. Pawinda, we're going to read that word a lot. That's like anyone who's not Tleilaxu is Pawinda. Waff is savoring what he believes is finally the time of Tleilaxu ascendancy. They've been waiting. They've been playing this ultra long con, which includes projecting a negative image of themselves to outsiders, making the universe at large think of them as dirty, vile, stupid, and weak. They have been getting everyone to underestimate them. And he does think back to this time where a fish speaker said to him, like, long pretense creates a reality. You are truly vile. And, essentially saying, like, you are what you pretend to be, which, yes, but then they like kill this person, but it's just like, you are who you pretend to be. Like, you gotta be careful with what you pretend and what you're putting out there, because it'll just become a reality. But we'll see what happens with them. He puts on his kilat, which is a robe of honor worn by Islamic rulers, and meets with his Malik brothers, his leader bros, after submitting to and being readmitted to the Kel, or their clan, by the Gufran, which is a ritual of forgiveness that cleanses an individual for contact with the Pawinda. Much like Islam, they perform a ritualistic prayer at the break of dawn. Waff leads them. He says, "The sun is not God." And then he hears it just echoed throughout the entire city, which I thought was a really cool moment. And he's stoked to get down to business because his last foray with the Pawinda have been very successful. He was on, every time he leaves, he thinks of it as a Lashkar, which is like a war party seeking ultimate revenge, which they have named Bodal. And he's excited to talk about this Atreides manifesto with his 9 Malik bros. And he wants to distribute the fuck out of this, manifesto that he's gotten. Others feel like this is a really dangerous move. And he assures them that with Ix and the fish speakers and the guild in their pocket, there is nothing to fear. Okay. And then they're like, well, what about the Honored Matres? Like, what's up with these bitches? Like, let's cross that bridge when we get there. Plus, we got homies returning from the scattering who can help us deal with them. It's fine, one thing at a time. And his bros do agree that shit is lining up pretty well for them. I mean, again, they've got Ix, the fish speakers, and the guild in their pocket. Okay, these are like the 3 other main influences in the universe. So, and then they're saying, well, also, maybe the Bene Gesserit will just take care of the Honored Matres. Like, maybe they'll just get in a fight and then they'll take care of it and we don't have to do anything. But big question though, who wrote this Atreides manifesto? Because it's one person, and whoever wrote it is Atreides, and they call every other religion into question except for ours. Does this person know that we exist? Because this is a secret, and this person, the way they're talking, it makes me think that they know that we're a thing. And the guild, they might know, but they wouldn't fucking dare say shit. And the Atreides, and it's this thing says, this Atreides manifesto says, forces we cannot understand permeate our universe. We see the shadow of those forces when they are projected upon a screen available to our senses, but understand them we do not. And he's like, that's us, bro. That's us. We are the shadows, and they don't understand our forces. And, we're just projecting this image and And this thing also says, understanding requires words. Some things cannot be reduced to words. There are things that can be experienced, that can only be experienced wordlessly. That's what we believe. That's what we believe. What the fuck? You know, they're going to think that we wrote this shit, dog. And these Powinda assholes, and Waff reminds them, these Powinda assholes believe in words. Okay, and this document is saying things exist which cannot be described in words. And this is going to shake a universe where words are the supreme belief. And what do we believe, guys? We believe, silently, they don't say it because then it's saying words. To achieve Satori, no understanding is needed. Satori exists without words, without even a name. So I can say God, but that is not my God. That is only a noise and no more potent than any other noise. So while this Powinda manifesto softens the masses for the time that we take the reins and our great belief prevails, we shouldn't be afraid of it because it's just words. You know, words are wind. Don't worry about it. And look, bros, our God is an awesome God, okay? we got Ix. We got the fish speakers. We got the guild. We got our fucking Duncan Gola on Gamu, okay? This document is a sign that it's go time, fellas. So we're going to propagate it secretly. We're going to shun it openly and let it do its work to disrupt the universe and make way for our ascendancy. And, you know, sure, maybe an Atreides wrote it, but this is really the work of God. It's not the work of an Atreides. Don't think of it like that. Think of it as the work of God. There's like God is working through this Atreides. And they're all like, yes, let's go. Yes. Okay. You're right, Waff. Let's do it. And I love that when he's talking about like the Satori requires, you know, no understanding. And he's talking about you can say God, but that is not my God. That is only a noise. That is the Zen part of their situation. I mean, there's definitely a lot of the Islamic influence in the way that they are running their stuff. But the whole like non-logic and all of that is like straight up Zen as fuck. By the way, old Scytale makes a reappearance. If you remember, Scytale was a face dancer who was fucking with Paul in Messiah of Dune. He was killed. Paul ended up killing him with a knife at the very end. But even so, Scytale helped discover the secret of awakening Agola and was the first to be brought back and was promoted from being a face dancer to being a master, and has worked his way up the ranks into now being the most junior member of the Mashik. It is interesting because in 42 Nas Michael, Bajaz is never mentioned. So it's like, man, did Bajaz like really piss somebody off? What happened with Bajaz? Like, what happened with Bajaz? Why did Scytale? You would think that it's like they would like be like, who cares, Scytale? Fuck you. You were a face dancer. Like, it is a little confusing. I'm not going to lie. It's like, why is Scytale? Why did they promote him? And I didn't even know you could be promoted. I thought that if you were a face dancer, you were just like this fucking weird guy. Like, you're just like, you can't. But he's a special case. He's a special case. Now let's go to our next chapter. Finally, we're back on Arrakis. We made it. We made it, bros. We're back on Arrakis. And it has changed back into a desert since the time of the God Emperor, where it was this nice green lush place. Now it is a desert planet with all new sandworms that were spawned from the sand trout skin after his death. And we are with Shiana, the aforementioned girl who can control the sandworms, which Duncan is supposed to dictamize in a few years. She's 11. She's been living with the priests of the Church of the Divided God, the official religion of Arrakis. She's been with them for 3 years. And this all happened when she was 8. Everything started when she was 8. She was a poor desert waif living in an impoverished pioneer settlement far beyond the security of Keen, which is shortened from Arakeen. She was out scavenging for melange, which even at modern deflated prices was still something that could help her poor village. And then she hears screaming. Oh my God. She runs. She sees a worm has gotten in the defenses of her town, and it has engulfed her entire home. Like, she sees people running. They're all scooped up. Her entire town is just erased off the face of a planet after being swallowed by a sandworm. And she realizes that, unfortunately, they had built her town upon a pre-spice blow. They had no idea which sandworms cannot resist. And she's so mad that she forgets herself and she runs up behind the worm and gets on top of it and runs all the way to the top and starts beating it with her fists. And then it stops. And she's like, oh, fuck. And she kind of comes to herself and realizes, like, this thing's going to turn and smush me, or it's going to go underground and I'm going to, like, be thrown off and it's just going to, like, come back up and eat me. But it doesn't. And it just starts going. And it takes her towards Keen. And she's nervous because, like, the priests have outlawed people riding worms because these are sacred worms. These are part of Leto, the god emperor. Like, you can't ride him around. Like, no. And so it takes her all the way up to Keen, stops 50 meters from the Kanat that guards Keen, and she gets off its back and runs around to its face, and she shakes her fist at it, screaming, "Damn you, shaitan! What do we ever do to you?" She's real angry. And notice she calls the word shaitan and not shai-halud. Shaitan means evil spirit. It is another Islamic word. It's evil spirit. It's very close to Satan. It's interesting. You see how shaitan is kind of like, and Satan are very similar. And shai-halud actually means thing of eternity. So just a little fun fact there. And she's from the dregs of Reikian society, so she does not look upon the sandworms as divine, but as these dangerous fucking creatures that are to be feared and can swallow your entire town and ruin your life. Later, she realizes that she did a crazy fucking bitch act by confronting this worm, but understands subconsciously that she was hoping that it would eat her and that she wanted to die and be with her friends, which is really sad. But the worm doesn't eat her. It just turns and it leaves and goes back into the desert. And the Reikian priests have been watching this whole thing go down, and they fly over in a thopter and land. And she's like, fuck, I'm going to be punished. They saw me. This is it. And to her surprise, the priests pop out from the thopter, fall and kneel to her, saying, "Child of Shai-Halud, we saw your father bring you from his lands." And she's really confused. And they ask her to stay with them. And she's like, "You're bad." And they're like, "Oh no. Oh, this sacred child says we're bad." And they prostrate themselves. And knowing that she's just been spared, her mind connects this experience with the words of the dancing song, "Shai-Halud, spare us, take Shaitan away." And so she just begins this thing called the dance. But really it's the dance of propitiation, an act which the priests interpreted as her asking Shai-Halud to forgive his people and to forgive them for being bad. So they join in and they start clapping and singing the words for her while she does her like little crazy dance, and she's stamping in the desert. And there's this pattern of her dance is like there's like 100 different steps before it repeats. Like that's how like far apart they are, but she's killing it. And a sandworm is not summoned back, and so they know that they are forgiven, and she returns with him. Now, the priests, they argue about what to do with her, and these arguments go straight up to the top to the high priest, Hedley Tuick, who obviously is a descendant of the smuggler that Halleck used to hang out with, Tuick, if you remember him from the original Dune novel. Some believe she's just desert trash and should be punished for riding Shai-Halud. Others contend that technically she didn't ride him because she didn't have maker hooks, and she couldn't control where he was going, and she also conversed with him unafraid. She also talked to him. So, so the council is very split on this. They're like, okay, fine, let's test her. They take her back out to the desert, and they plant a thumper and retreat in their thopter to watch the scene. And Shiana is so pissed. She's like, I knew it. They were going to punish me. And here it is. Like, they're going to feed me to these fucking sandworms, these asshole priests, because they do. That's what they do. They take people out and they feed them to sandworms. This is a standard punishment. 2 worms come. They stop about 3 meters from Shiana, and still wanting to die, she says, "Go ahead and eat me. That's what they want. You killed my mother and father and all my friends. You fucker." And like she shakes her fist and they kind of retreat a little bit, and she screams, "If you don't want me, then go back where you fucking came from," and waves towards the desert. And then they turn in unison, and then they go back, and the priests are like, holy fucking shit. And they take her and they go back to their keep with her. And then the Bene Gesserit get a full report on this entire scene. By nightfall, word gets back to Chapterhouse in the morning. Next, we've got Chapter 7, Janet, Roxborough, and the Warrior Mentat. So Miles is thinking back on his childhood days to a dinner with his family. His mother is an imposing, fair-haired Reverend Mother, permanently detached on special duty, being married to a Chome man, Lashi Teg, and raising their children, Miles and Sabine. He had a little brother, but apparently he was poisoned on Romo, but he doesn't have one anymore. Janet Roxborough of the Laernis Roxboroughs is instructing his father on how to deal with a shady rice situation with a free trader whose strings are being pulled by the Tleilaxu. She knows that face dancers are on this trader's ships. And she knows the face dancers know that she's here and she's like watching this whole deal go down. And Janet explains that the Tleilaxu don't need the rice. They need it to trade with somebody else for something else. And this is the only place that they can get this rice in this sector. So they need to find out who really needs this rice. You know, because she's here, she's on the scene. She needs to know what's going on. You know, she's not going to let Tleilaxu fuckery go down on her watch without her understanding what the situation is. Lashi understands that to lure the face dancers out of the ship so that they can capture them, they need to send Janet elsewhere. So they believe that they won't be detected because the only person around who can detect them is Janet. So if they do this feint and they send her somewhere, well, she can play detective and try to figure out what's going on, but then that'll also lure them out, so they can get them. And Janet compliments him on his perceptiveness. You are lovely when you leap ahead of me in that way. I thought that was very sweet because can you imagine being married to a Reverend Mother? This man's married to a Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit. They're generally not married. They're generally just work for the sisterhood. And she's, she's really thousands of years old, with her memories. She's a crazy being, who is super wise and has all this crazy knowledge. And it's oh, that's your wife. And you got to deal with that. And he does, but apparently he loves it. And she's so complimentary to him, though. She doesn't look down on him. She's not talking shit to him. She's not acting like she's better than him. She's you are lovely when you leap ahead of me that way. Gives him compliments, even though she's telling him what to do. It's in the cutest, nicest way possible. I really love it. I love their little deal. And their plan works. The face dancers are drawn out into the open, and Miles' father drives a bargain with them that wins Chome's highest commendation and a sweet bonus. And Janet shows young Miles the two face dancers on a viewer screen. These are two small men, alike as twins, chinless round faces, pug noses, tiny mouths, black button eyes, and short, bristly white hair. So that's what they look like when they're just themselves. They're just these weird little guys. And she teaches her son about the Tleilaxu way of using illusion to achieve real goals, how face dancers can shapeshift where no one but she could detect them, and that some of the new ones can absorb victims' memories, but the Tleilaxu don't know that we know this, so mum's the word. Miles learns that these are communal beings, insect-like, mules who can change gender, who have no sense of self beyond self-preservation, unless ordered to die by their masters, which makes them something worse than amoral. They are flesh-made automaton, bred only to obey their masters and are never to be trusted. His mother tells him the Bene Gesserit have been able to breed the masters, so they've captured them and bred with them, but their offspring are really weird. There's very few female births. And even then, when they do have a female and they do try to awaken her other memories, we can't probe their other memories. We can't get in there for whatever reason. So the Tleilaxu history is a huge blind spot to the Bene Gesserit. They have no idea about their history. She also teaches him the subtle ways to spot them, which he soaks up very quickly. And she reveals to him that he may become a mentat and even more someday. Janet is very proud of her son's perception, and when he asks about the Tleilaxu women, wondering if they exist, she assures him that they do, even though no one outside the Tleilaxu has ever seen one. No one's ever seen one, but they're definitely around, but we have no fucking clue what is going on. Mother and son turn their attention back to the deal being struck and see a large amount of spice markers changing hands from Face Dancer to Miles' father. And because these Face Dancers were put in a corner and forced to buy rice at a crazy price that they, like, way higher than they anticipated, this creates a paper trail that they'll be able to follow more quickly, and they can track it and discover, like, what's being traded by whom, and, like, figure this, like, mystery out. Right before Miles turns 13, he is sent to Lampadas for advanced Bene Gesserit schooling, where he is evaluated, and his mother is congratulated on giving them the warrior mentat they had hoped for. He finds this note of thanks going through her things after her death. I love that she kept the little note. It was just like, hey, you did it. You created a cool guy. And that's why she has been assigned specifically in this way. It's like they were like, this Lost She Tag, he's got some hot genes. And we think mixing your hot genes with his hot genes is going to make ultra hot mentat warrior. And it's going to be cool. And like, we could use him. And it's going to be, we could use this help. Like, we could just like make this happen. Like, go be a mom, raise this cool guy, give us a cool guy. And then she totally did. His great love and awe of his mother transfers to the sisterhood itself. And he is impressed with them being one of the most powerful forces in the universe, and made more impressive that they retained their pervasive influence after the rise of the Bene Tleilax post melange money, whenever they figured out how to make the melange, some fake melange. They got all this power. They were still able to kind of keep their way up there. Now, while at school, the sisters reveal his Atreides ancestry to him, and they test him for prescience, and they test him for his ability to detect no ships. And they do this by feeding him a lot of fucking spice. And he fails these tests, but taking all this spice, he gets all tripped out, and his true self awakens, the mind at the beginning. And his awareness is like much expanded, and he sees the magic of the universe. And it was cute, too. They talk about how he was forced to draw a freehand circle with either hand. And it's like, oh, whoa. Like, for those of you who don't know, drawing a perfect circle is, like, really, really hard. It's like really, really hard. And there's a story of, there was this one artist named Giotto. And Giotto, I don't know how to say it, but he was contacted by the church. Pope Benedict the 11th was looking for an artist to do some commissions for the church. And he sends a messenger, Giotto, and it's like, oh, well, you know, can you, like, the Pope wants you to bring, you know, send us a drawing back so he can look at it and, you know, see if he wants to hire you or not. And Giotto just makes a perfect circle on a piece of paper and gives it to the guy. And it's just like, there it is. And he's like, is that it? You want me to do this? You want me to give him a circle? And he's like, yeah, give him the circle, you know? And he goes back, and Pope Benedict, being a wise man, is like, whoa, this man drew a perfect circle. Like, he was like very impressed. He's like, yes, he's hired. He is hired on the spot. He's hired. We got to have him. So I like that this weird drawing of freehand circle was like incorporated into this chapter. Eventually, Teg comes back down from his kind of reawakening spice trip, but this memory of this time gives him strength, especially recently during his first interview with Shuang Yu, where she deliberately sits back. Like, she has him where he's sitting in front of her. She's backlit, so he can't really see her face or her features, but there's like this corona behind her head. And also, like, she's forcing him to sit in a fucking chair dog, which he hates, and she knows that. and they're discussing the Duncan assignment. And during their interview, Teg's computation that he was bred to be a part of a larger Bene Gesserit plan is reconfirmed. He can sense Shuang Yu's jealousy and great anger, because guess what? Janet, just like Jessica, Janet loved her little son and loved little Miles, even though she's not supposed to. I think she did a little bit. And she gave him, she taught him some of the forbidden teachings of how to read through Bene Gesserit masks, you know. So he knows their fucking tricks. He knows some of their fucking tricks, but he's careful to conceal it. Like, he doesn't let them know that he knows, you know, like, he just is like, oh, whatever. But like, he fucking knows. And And she knows, like Xuan Yu knows that Teg is Taraz's Bashar. And he knows that she's in active opposition of this Gola project. And that Xuan Yu is the enemy. And that Teg must protect Duncan. On to chapter 8. And that's our final chapter. The Powinda of Powindas. I love saying it. Powinda. It's a fun word. Waff is back. He's out on the old Lashkar. He's on the war party. He's been demanded for a meeting with the Honored Matres. This is his first foray with the Honored Matres, and he's been warned by the Tleilaxu who have returned from the scattering that these women are way worse than the Bene Gesserit, and there are a lot more of them. Waff doesn't fully trust these hoes from the scattering. He's like, okay, you say you're our people and you went out scattering and you came back and you're telling me this stuff, but like, you've been out with the Powindas a really long time. You're probably fucked up. But this is a great way to test their truthfulness. And they've also brought back some wild ass information that has been incorporated into the Duncan Golas. So, it's all been worth the risk of Powinda contamination. This meeting is taking place on an Ixian nose ship in an orbit around a mutually chosen planet in a nowhere solar system. And of course, Waff has already replaced some of the crew with his new fucking face dancers. He's already doing his shady shit. And hopefully they won't be detected by the Honored Matres because he doesn't really know their powers. And he has super secret poison darts in his sleeves. And hopefully that won't be detected by the snoopers. and again, no one has seen these fucking weapons. Like nobody. Like they are so fucking secretive. The Honored Matre is an older woman in a red leotard with a blue cape decorated with arabesques and dragon designs, and she speaks down to Waff. She's like dripping with disdain. She just is like, ugh, this guy. He wonders, what do these women need from me? And he asks her, he's like, what tokens are we bargaining for? Like, what is this? She offers no bargain and demands to know about the Duncan Gola that they made for the witches. And he's like, well, what do I get if I tell? Like, why would I tell you? What do I get? And she's like, I might give you something if I feel like it after you tell me. And it's like, this is not going well. These are not cute ladies. This woman wants to know why they kill the Golas that they keep selling, the Bene Gesserit. She knows that they've changed him somehow, making it possible for him to regain his memories, and that the girl on Arrakis, Shiana, figures into this Bene Gesserit plans. And Waff's like, fuck, these Honored Matres got spies. This lady should not know all this. Have we been infiltrated? And this woman then tries the voice with him. She's like, how have you changed this Gola? And he's like, oh. But he's resistant. He's resistant. He catches himself. He almost let it slip. And they are at a standstill. And the woman busts out some Zensuni shit. She's like, we are confronted by a problem that cannot be solved by logical means. And Waff's like, oh, is she Zensuni? Is she cool? Is she cool? But he plays it cool, and he baits her to continue. And she is good at responding to his inner thoughts. And he wonders, like, can this bitch read minds? But he continues to probe her with innocent-sounding questions until he's certain that she's feigning Zensuni non-logic and guesses at the history of the Honored Matres, surmising that they came from one of the natural Reverend Mothers on Arrakis who went out into the scattering. She tries the voice again. What have you brought with this Gola? But Waff shrugs it off again. She changes her demanding tack and goes for the seduction route instead. She's like, I can make you feel so good, dude. Like, you don't even know. And he realizes that this woman needs essential information from him, and she has no other source. He deduces that she wants to know if this Duncan has the ability to find a no ship, and lies to her and says, like, yeah, this is what the Bene Gesserit seek with him. That's what this whole thing's about, is they're trying to, he's supposed to detect no ships. She's like, oh. And then she offers him the worst trade deal in history. Are the Tleilaxu to be our willing servants or compelled? And Waff's like, you're offering me slavery? Like, that's your offer here? Slavery. And she's like, well, that is one of your options, yes. And he feigns submission, asks, well, what would you have me do? She commands him to take 2 younger Honored Matres with him, breed with them, let them inspect Tleilaxu, and return to her with their report. The two enter, and Waff is like, oh my God, thank God. One of them has been replaced by one of my face dancers. Yes. He's so relieved. And he realizes also that the Honored Matres can't detect face dancers. Double relief. He pretends to go along with it. He's like, oh, yes, yes. He bows and then flicks his fucking sleeves. And then the little darts shoot out, and the Honored Matre shoots a foot out and catches him in the left thigh before he can jerk himself out of harm's way. And apparently her reaction is not mediated by her central nervous system. So she reacted so quickly that this is something that's coming from the muscles themselves. It's like instantaneous reaction. But even though she reacted really fast, she still fucking died, along with the other Honored Matre. Yeah, it's that lizard brain Sly Raider. Yes. Other face dancers enter, and they take the place of the two women, the two dead Honored Matres, and they turn these bodies to ash, and they just scoop them up real quick. And Waff finds out that they've copied 4 other Honored Matres, and none have been detected. And Waff orders them to go back to the Honored Matre heartland and learn as much as they can about them and return. And then one of the face dancers is like, well, we can't, because they've erased the coordinates to their like home world and the scattering. Like, we have no fucking clue, but we just know that these ones live on Gamu. Like, that's all we know. Waff questions them about the Honored Matre talents, and they tell them that they are similar to Reverend Mothers, but without the other memories, and they have perfected the pleasures of sex beyond anything anyone has ever seen. And through this, they accept the worship of their followers. And would you like a demonstration? And Waff's like, no, thank you. But right now, just pretend to be my Honored Matre handlers, okay, until we're in private, and then I'm in charge. But while we're out and about, just act like you're in charge. And once we're gone, this no ship must never return to Gamu, and it must vanish without a trace. So kill yourselves, kill everybody on board, make sure nobody finds the fucking ship. And they say, it will be done, Master. Last sentence of this session. For session 2, Mentat Muse would like a demonstration. Don't worry, you'll get demonstrations. The demonstrations are coming. Session 2, you're going to read pages 119 through 235. And the last sentence of the last chapter in this session is, and I hope you're prepared to kill anyone who tries to stop us. All right. Well, that was fantastic. What a great first session. 100 pages a week. I know it's tough, but we're going to get through this together. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up for this awesome book club, Heretics of Dune Club, Book 5. Give yourself a pat on the back for being here. Give yourself a round of applause, everyone. Yay, everyone. And I do want to remind people, if you have not ordered one of my Dune packs, my Heretics of Dune pack, final Dune pack, you can get one on danikahxix.bigcartel.com. This is both domestic and international. And you can get a bookmark, a sticker sheet, some really cool enamel pins, the whole deal. It's super cute. You're going to love it. So check it out. Yes. And we will be back next week with session 2. Can't wait. And now on Twitch, we are going to go to questions and answers. Mwah!